Welcome to the Maria Heller Show, on the net since 2000 and still going strong. If you feel like you're not getting the real news, if you feel like you're not connected spiritually, you have found your home. Maria covers a wide range of topics as only a snarky New Yorker can. Straight up, no chaser. No censorship, no corporate sponsors, thus true freedom of speech. Your subscription gives you unlimited access as a member of the smartest audience on earth. Relax and enjoy the education. Now here's Maria.
Good morning, world. Maria here, alive and kicking. Welcome to Awaken with Meria Monnica, a breath of fresh air from the news shows. And today we're going to be talking about Reiki and the misunderstandings about it, what it is, what it isn't. And some of you have sent in some questions, which is great. And before I even introduce Monica, I just want to wish my granddaughter Jenna a happy birthday. She's 24 today. Jenna,
happy birthday.
Good morning, Monica. Jenna has been a Reiki Master since she's 7 years old.
Oh, that's amazing. I love it.
And what's interesting is people think you need to have, book smarts to learn Reiki. Mm-hmm. But the truth of the matter is, once you have your attunements, you naturally are going to know how to use it. So when I do teach somebody Reiki, that's just extra. But I mean, I gave her and my second granddaughter, the minute they were born, as the nurses were cleaning their bodies, I was standing right there with the nurses, initiating them in Reiki, giving them their first level.
I love it.
And both of those girls were great children. They weren't criers, they weren't complainers or whiners. And as they got older, then I knew when to give them their second level. But Jenna is so naturally gifted that by the time she was 7, I wanted her to have her master's. And what's interesting is she has used it from everywhere, from being in school, from being on the playground. If a kid got hurt on a piece of equipment, she was right there Reikiing them. As she grew up, even when she was a lifeguard, if somebody got hurt or she's had a lot of people die around her, she would immediately start Reikiing them.
What an old soul.
Right, so she doesn't even have to be told to do it. And what was funny, you want to hear a cute little story? A couple of years ago when she was hanging out with her young friends, she started talking about Reiki, and she called me and she said, Grandma, I was talking to my friends and I talked about Reiki, and how could it be that none of them knew what Reiki is? She was like so surprised. So I said to her, listen, they didn't all have me as their grandmother. So be patient with them,
You know what I found was interesting, because I learned this back in the 70s, the word Reiki didn't exist, as you and I spoke about earlier. And what I loved is when I looked up Reiki and what it meant, because it's Japanese, it said Rei, which means God's wisdom or the higher power, and Ki, which is the life force energy. I love that.
Right.
I love that. When you think about the purity and the power, it's like, this is not something that some people can do. Some people are more gifted than others, because there are gifts, as they call the gifts of the spirit, and healing is one of them.
Right. But
anybody can actually do healing. And one of the things Maria and I wanted to talk about, if there were any differences between Reiki, hands-on healing, and absent healing. And we found there's so many parallels, but I want to hear more about Reiki from you.
Good. I'm glad. And I want the audience to know that Monica doesn't have her Reiki. If I ever kidnap her away from California, I will definitely give it to her. And Monica, like myself, when I lived in New York, I had not heard of Reiki. And I used to actually teach a class on hands-on healing, because I studied with a lot of spiritualists. So when I came out to Arizona, it was amazing to me how many people claimed Reiki. Many of them didn't have it. Many of them were just basically full of crap. And I couldn't understand. And I said to the person that ended up giving me Reiki, I already do this. So what difference is this going to make? Because I was a doubting Thomas. I always am on everything. And what was interesting is once I got my Reiki attunements, my healing ability soared, and I saw all the other gifts. I like to call them gifts of magic that you get with Reiki. that you don't have without it. Now, you started out talking about Reiki, and I want to explain to you, I love your description of it, but I want to give you the real one, okay? Now, when you look...
I just read this from a book.
Right.
I just read this from a book.
Okay. When you see Ki, that's our life force energy, okay?
Yeah.
It's, some people call it Chi, or
Yes,
Ki energy.
I do call it Chi.
Right. Everybody has that. Now, the REI, ray, part of it, is a separate healing ray that exists in the universe that you get attuned to. In other words, it's like tuning your radio into that specific channel. That ray is called ray, but it's also the healing ray. And without it, without being attuned, in other words, having your etheric body attuned to pick that ray up, you don't have Reiki. It's basically universal life force energy.
So it attunes itself to your own frequency in order to heal it. So in other words, you tune into that channel, and that person, the ray knows exactly what that person needs, which frequency. Are we talking about frequencies then at this point?
Well, it's a frequency, absolutely, but it's a healing frequency, and it's not just for you. Once you get attuned, you can channel that to your client. Okay, so if somebody came to me and said they're not feeling good, they have a pain in their shoulder. What I do is, when I'm putting my hands on their shoulder, the Reiki is automatically flowing to them. That universal life force energy is automatically flowing to them through me, which is fun because as the Reiki practitioner, you get the healing first.
Yes, you're right. That's correct. That's how I do hands-on healing as well. One of the things I do want to do is give the listeners some pointers about how they can start to activate themselves to become healers, because you can until you get a Reiki class or just learning the way I did when I took classes back in the 70s. And it's really interesting, the sensations you start to feel like, well, even when I talk about it, Meria, my hands start getting really warm and they start to vibrate and tingle.
Right.
Do you find that?
Oh, absolutely. That's the healing energy. And what's interesting, and I know I have some people listening that have Reiki, and I have some questions that we will get to. Sometimes it's going to come through the way you need it. So sometimes your hands are going to feel really cold. Sometimes they're going to feel really hot. And sometimes they almost feel electrical.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, if you have an injury, what does your doctor say? Depending on the injury, whether you need to use heat or whether you need to use ice.
That's correct. You're right. Good point.
Right. So the healing comes through the way you or the person you're healing needs it. It's kind of funny because some people think, do you have an electric wire up your sleeve that your hands are so hot?
It feels good, actually. I like it.
But, when your hands heat up like that and you don't have a need for it, I always tell my students to just put their hands out towards Mother Earth because she'll always take it.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah,
you can send that, you can send that healing to the planet. And another good thing is once you have your Reiki, every time you walk barefoot on the planet, you're healing the Earth.
That's correct. Yeah. 10 minutes. I always tell people, spend 10 minutes with your feet on the earth and let that energy come through you. Oh, I wanted to point out something that I learned in the 70s that really, really blew my mind. My teacher said, if you put your hands together and then move them apart about maybe 4 or 5 inches, turn on, make sure it's dark, and turn on a red light bulb or a blue light bulb. And if you look at your fingertips, you can see the electricity running from one finger to the next. It's really amazing.
Oh, yeah.
But it is there. That's what allows you to see that this isn't BS. This stuff really works.
Well,
so Intro 101,
Right. Well, I know you two were raised with the Bible stories. And what people forget is when Jesus went around healing people or raising them from the dead or whatever he did, especially his healing, what did he say? He said, what I can do, you all can do.
You can do.
And
that's in the book of John. Actually, that's in the book of John. I think it's chapter 12 or 10, one of those two. But yeah, he talks about the gifts of the Spirit there. I mean, I'm a minister, with the Unitarian Science of Mind Church, which is non-denominational metaphysical. And so I had to study the book, and I got to learn what it's really about, as opposed to taking it literally. But Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, to me, were the most inspiring. And the book of Corinthians, chapter 12, talks about all the spirits, all the spiritual gifts of healing, speaking in tongues, mediumship, prophecy. It's all there. And so people that say, oh, that's the devil's work, I go, oh, why is it in the Bible then? So then you have selective reading?
Right. Well, I guess they've left off, when they were going through the 300 plus books to when Constantine put it all together in 66 books. They try to eliminate as much of that as possible, but obviously they didn't eliminate all of it.
All of it, yeah. And the King James Version, oh my God, what is it with my talking today? King James Version was the one that eliminated so much of it. The nuns actually told me when I used to be a Catholic back in the day, I was 19, they said, a lot of what was real and what is true was removed back in the times of Rasputin. So I guess that would have been around the 6th century. And so they said, what you're teaching is true, and that's why you should leave the Catholic Church, because you know too much. Here I'm a 19-year-old teaching classes to 4 nuns.
Well,
they go, leave the Catholic Church, and I did.
Well, listen, when I was a kid, as you know and my listeners know by now, I was raised Jehovah's Witness. By the time I was 11 years old, I could argue the scriptures with a rabbi or a priest and win the conversation. So
I don't doubt that.
So
not one bit, not surprised.
Right.
Not surprised.
I know.
It's always good to have some knowledge about different things, because
absolutely.
That book is really very symbolic.
Right.
And the stories, when you read them via symbolism as opposed to literal, are extremely inspiring. Then you get to Deuteronomy that says, don't do this, don't do that, don't believe in astrology, whatever. I'm like, fuck you.
Oh.
Who are you? You're just a person that decided to, like they do these days with the Christian right, they spin everything.
Right. Well, I go back to what you said about what Jesus said, that anybody can do this. And I remember when I was studying with Sun Bear, he used to get accused of black magic, witchery, whatever, because his specialty was bringing rain. So he was called to different parts of the world that were in drought, and he would do his ceremony, and it would rain. And I remember him saying...
And even when we went through a drought, all the Indians got together here in California and prayed for rain, and it rained the next day. This was about 5 years ago.
Right. So,
because we didn't have any rain.
Right. So in the words of Sun Bear, he said, they try to say that this is supernatural, but it was always very natural for people until religion beat it out of them and made it something wicked.
Exactly. I love Nikola Tesla's quote about science versus religion. It's if you guys ever want to read anything inspiring, read all of Nikola Tesla's quotes. I have them framed in my home because that guy invented so many things that people have no clue about. For some reason, they kept him down. Now it's coming up. Watch the Tesla files. He talks about how he got all his information from extraterrestrials. And he said anybody can connect with them.
Well, not surprised at all. Anyway, Pat has a question on Reiki, and then you and I will get back to our discussion. She says, I was wondering if you and Monica could talk about Reiki self-healing. She said, I try to focus on each position, but my mind wanders. Is it best to try meditation during it or focus on the healing?
I do have an answer for her.
Sure.
And my answer is actually very simple. This is something I do every single morning. I always call the Godhead or the source of love, whatever you want to call it, it's up to you because it doesn't care. But I call upon love to bring down this beautiful white light as representative of love, and it goes and permeates through my body, and it wipes out all shadows, all darkness, all negativity, anything that's anti-love. It pushes it out of my system. Then I breathe in and breathe out very slowly. I also have it pour into my home, my cats, my family members, my car. And then within about 5 minutes, I feel so peaceful. So I'm getting the healing directly from the source as opposed to sending it to myself.
Right. Okay, that's
it
one
works.
way. Good. Pat, if you were here in person, I would show you very easily. Here's the thing. there's no right way or wrong way to do Reiki. I always teach my students the way it was taught to me, but eventually you find your space with it. You can't do anything wrong with it. So let's just say the Reiki really needs to go to your knees, but you're Reikiing your chest. The Reiki goes where it needs to go. That's number one. And then when you're focusing, she says, I could understand focusing on each position, but your mind wanders. I know when I do it for myself, I can't get past my head positions because I'm already sleeping. So what I also do then is I ask my Reiki guides if I fall asleep, during when I'm sending my absentee or distant healings at night, I ask my Reiki guides to finish it for me in case I fall asleep.
Oh, see, that's smart, because then asking you shall receive.
Right. And as far as, listen, you don't need to concentrate. You don't need to meditate. You don't need to do any of that. You have a pain on your body, put your hands on it. You want to Reiki yourself, I'll give you the shortcut, because you know me, Monica, I love shortcuts. If you're sitting watching TV, you know how most people will sit and they'll clasp their hands behind their neck?
Yes.
All you have to do is that, and it's going through your body, okay?
Oh, yeah. One thing I want to point out that just popped in my head, because you know how we are, we're telepathic, so stuff comes through quickly with us. The right hand, I was taught back in the 70s, which I've always done, is the right hand sends out the healing, the left hand takes out the negative energy, because the left side is what receives, the right side is what sends out. And so the left side is removing all the old energy, and the right side is sending in loving energy. But then when you're done, it's important to either wash your hands or flick it outward.
Absolutely.
You don't want to hang on to that stuff.
Absolutely.
I don't know if Reiki does that or not, but we do cleanse.
No, I listen. A lot of my students, and I hear from other people that are not my students, whether it's on social media or somewhere else, where they say, I don't want to do hands-on healing or Reiki to anybody because I feel sick after that, or I pick up their stuff. If that's happening, it means their teacher never taught them how to properly ground, center, and protect themselves before they work on someone else.
That's correct. Absolutely. This is why I said flick it out, get rid of it. And just doing the gesture is the affirmation, and it does. You've got to take care of yourself. Otherwise, you can become an empath and end up getting sick every time you run into someone who's got something going on.
Listen, absolutely. Look, in this world, whether you're doing Reiki or just going down the street or going to business during the day, and then you come home and you feel totally whipped. I tell people the reason for that is you went out with your chakras wide open.
Open, yes.
So I always tell my students, shut down your solar plexus before you work on someone else.
Especially the solar plexus, and that's the third chakra in the abdominal area. The color that represents it is yellow. It's also in the key of E, and musical key of E, and that's the area where you feel. So you want to shut that one down. So what I do is I pretend that there's a dimmer switch in it, like in the light, and I turn it all the way down to 2. And so that protects me from anyone else. I was actually, you have to believe this. Yeah, you'll believe it. I was taught how to turn down the chakras from connecting with other people on an empathetic level. I was taught that through a message I received from John Lennon after he died. Mm-hmm. Weird, huh?
Not for you, it's not. There's a lot of different, for people that have been with my show a long time, and some of you have, you've been here since the first day I started. I had done some interviews with other Reiki masters. I don't even remember who they were or if they're still in the archives. But the thing is, people send me a lot of books on Reiki trying to get on the show. And
really?
When I look at the depth of these books, they're like an inch and a half. I immediately am turned off because Reiki is the simplest thing to teach, the simplest thing to explain. And I just don't understand what they're so busy writing all this stuff about. And that's pretty much why I wrote my book on Reiki, which is like 20 pages, because it's all you really need. And everything else is just superfluous, and I don't get it. And then I noticed a lot of people that came up with these made-up forms of Reiki with weird names to them. And some of them will have 10 levels, some of them will be, lifelong classes. And the way I see that is if it's more than 3 attunements and 3 classes, it's only about making money.
You're right. Maria, do you happen to have a video on YouTube that shows people how to do, like, let's say, a primary class, something to begin with? Because you're really good at speaking. I've heard you.
Oh.
And I was thinking that maybe you should do a YouTube video.
Well, when I teach Reiki, first of all, it's very sacred. It's very private. So I don't understand people that teach these classes at 300 people at a time. So I've always done it in a sacred manner, in private, one-on-one, inside my medicine wheel. And the symbols are considered so sacred that they're not to be shown. So the whole process of the attunements is not something I allow anyone else to see unless they're getting their attunement. Now there's a lot of I don't know what that weird noise is on your phone. Are you okay? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, so we're getting a lot of strange noise on the phone.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
I would actually put a cup of coffee here.
Oh.
Next to me. I forgot to pour it before. I'm sorry.
No worries. I just thought we were going to lose our connection. There are a lot of people out that have Reiki books out where they draw the symbols. Some of them are unrecognizable to me because they're not the original symbols that Mikhail Usui gave us. So a lot of them are made up. Some of them make shortcuts, and people argue over whether the symbols should be in a book or not. But the symbols are basically useless unless you've been attuned. So I see a lot of infighting in the Reiki community. It's almost like everybody's fighting for the last dollar. Yeah. And I keep it reasonable because people don't realize when Reiki came to America, it was in the 1950s. And in the
I did not know that.
Right. In the 1950s, I think she was the great-granddaughter of one of his masters, Phyllis. She charged in the 1950s, in 1950s money, $10,000 for a Reiki.
Oh, that's insane.
And when they asked her why so expensive, her answer was, Americans don't appreciate anything unless they pay a lot for it.
Yeah, there's some truth to that.
So I'm not charging her 1950s $10,000, but it has to also be enough to honor your teacher and for you to honor Reiki. Mm-hmm. I've seen some people do some pretty dastardly things with their Reiki, really dishonoring it. And what I find is in a lot of these books, everybody always teaches, you probably heard it too, Monica. Once you have Reiki, you always have Reiki. That's not true. Okay, as soon as somebody tries to use it for something dastardly or evil, they lose it. Okay.
They lose it.
So it's not a forever thing.
Yeah, that's the intention and what comes of it. I learned a lot of this from actually a Chinese woman who taught me feng shui, which is why I use the word qi instead of qi, because that's the Chinese way.
Right.
So she was on Oprah, and I met her. Her name was Maya, and we exchanged sessions, and she taught me a lot about feng shui and the qi energy and the sha energy. And I thought to myself, well, this is like the healing of the home by bringing about balance, or wherever your environment is.
Oh, yeah, feng shui is great. It's totally
it's great. I know.
Well, years ago, I was invited to Tuscany to teach the medicine wheel.
Oh, God, really?
Yeah. And I got to Tuscany, and there were other teachers teaching different classes, but I was there to teach the medicine wheel. And I remember on the opening night, all the presenters and all the people attending, they had like a little cocktail party, whatever, intro thing. Mm-hmm. And I saw this beautiful Asian woman across the room. I really didn't pay too much attention to her, but all of a sudden she like zeroed in on me, Monica, and ran across the room, and she looked at me and she said, "Who are you?" And I looked at her and I said, "Well, I'm Maria Heller. I'm here to teach the medicine wheel." And she said, "I felt your Reiki across the room." And she then proceeds to tell me she had a major Reiki institute on the Big Island in Hawaii. She studied with the lineage of Phyllis, direct in the lineage of Usui. And yet she said to me, "Your Reiki is stronger than mine. I can sense it. What's different?" And I looked at her and I said, "Listen, I'm not here to compete with you. I'm not teaching Reiki here. I'm teaching the wheel, right?" So, but she wanted to know. And I said, "Well, I attune my students in my medicine wheel." I said, "And I include a symbol for the wheel when I attune them." And
I
she
would
said,
certainly love to have a session with you.
right, and she was all, I want to learn more about your medicine wheel. She drags me up to her room. I'm teaching her about the medicine wheel. She bought my book on the wheel, and she said as soon as she got back to Hawaii, she was building a wheel in her center.
Oh, I love it. So, Meria, when people contact you for a Reiki treatment like absent healing, since not everybody lives in Arizona, so can you explain how you do that, or just some basics about what you do?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Good questions. Wow, I'm loving this. You're a good interviewer, Monica.
Thanks.
Well, a lot of people say to me, how do you get through the day? You're always in a good mood. Things always seem to work out for you. Even when they look shitty, they always seem to work out for you. You cover the news. How are you not a basket case? And it's simple. I tell people I start my day reading the Reiki principles. And then I end my day when I get in bed. That's when I send my long distance healing to people that have asked for it. It's not hard to do. You don't have that ability until you have your second level. And there's a difference between the first, second, and third level. If you want, we could get into that.
Is that like beginning, intermediate, and advanced, kind of like?
Well, it is and it isn't. Okay. The first level is basically for self-healing. So if somebody finds themselves constantly going for treatment, let's say they're going to their chiropractor or they're getting massages or they're coming for Reiki treatments time and again, it's easier for them to just get their attunement because the Reiki will automatically start healing them. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't work on other people, but it takes a lot longer with your first level. Because the first level requires you to hold the positions, which are about 12, for 5 minutes each. So I don't have the time to give somebody an hour and a half treatment. The second level is really where the magic comes in. The second level gives you the ability to 3 minutes a spot. So you can do somebody completely in 45 minutes, which saves time. It also gives you the ability to send absentee or distance healing, which you don't have with the first level. You get the symbols in the second level. You don't get any of the symbols in the first. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So let's say you and I, we both had our natural healing ability, okay? We were both teaching hands-on healing before Reiki. So your natural healing ability with the first level gets magnified 20 times over. So it's like going from walking to riding a bicycle.
Yeah.
But the second level changes your energy, bumps it up 80 times over. So it's like going from a bicycle to a race car. And the second level takes time to adjust to. So it's always up to the master whether or not you're ever able to get to the third level.
So it's bumping up your frequency each time.
Exactly.
So therefore you have to, I guess the principles that I was reading before we actually went on the air, I would love for you to read those, or I can read them, but you said that there was another one that was like that. I want to talk about that later too. So your frequency is going to be changing and moving up to a higher level of
Exactly.
frequency.
So the first level, not only do you change your frequency, which, by the way, for everybody listening, everybody's worried about raising their vibration. If the shift comes, you want to be vibrating at the right level. The great thing is Reiki will automatically raise your vibration. You don't have to do anything except get your attunements.
So that's why the first part has to be self-healing. It has to.
Exactly.
You can't do anything else until you take care of self.
Exactly. So the first part is mostly physical self-healing. Not to say you can't work on other people, because you can. Yeah. I always tell my students to practice on everybody they can. No one's going to turn down a free healing treatment. I've never seen that.
Not.
But the
we
second...
used to do something in Meria called the cleansing of the aura, which I always loved. And it was like, you don't touch the person when they're there, like in a chair sitting in front of me. I would comb the aura with my fingers. And as I combed out all of the negative vibrational frequency that's caught between the colors that I can see from the aura, because the aura is an electromagnetic field of energy, and I could see the colors from it. Each color meant something to me. I could tell what was going on. And as I moved my hand down through the body, not touching it, I would run into cold spots. And
Right.
that's where I focus more energy on.
Absolutely.
The
That cold spot
telling
is
me.
going to show you where the injury is or where there is a
Exactly.
block. Sometimes people have a block, and that'll also, give you that clue. But the
Well,
first,
you know what? You've awakened this interest in me because, we have so many subjects that we've covered and so many subjects that we've learned throughout the last 30, 40, 50 years. Well, I've been at this since I was 16, and I just turned 68 2 weeks ago. So long time.
Happy birthday.
And there's so many subjects, but I'm glad we're bringing it back to a basic thing called healing, because we need to give that to ourselves. I think it's the most loving thing we can do, and then send it out to others. Why not?
Absolutely. And listen, I don't charge for my long distance healing. If
No.
somebody asks me, everybody needs to have a giveaway. That's one of the lessons of the medicine wheel. Is you have to have something that you give away for free in order to receive. You have to be able to give.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Right. So, anybody out there that's ever asked me for that, because for me, I don't have time to treat people in person. I'd rather be teaching it because that's why I'm a master. But I have so many great students all over the country, some in other countries, that are second level practitioners. So when somebody comes to me for a recommendation, I know I've got the best people that I can refer because I taught them myself.
You know what, Maria? As we're sitting here, I'm coming up with an idea.
Oh.
you know how that happens, right?
Yep.
I was thinking of starting a separate service, to give away healing by having people call my number, telling me what's going on in their life, and then I will say a prayer or meditation for them that'll be about a minute long, and that will instantly start them receiving that healing. I'm thinking about doing that. I think it's a good idea.
That is a good idea. I mean, I have people, strangers, that, they'll write me on social media or send me an email. I have one woman I've been sending Reiki to for different issues. I've never met her, never even talked to her. She just sends me an email, tells me what's going on, and I just throw her on the list. Anyway, let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk about the third level so that everybody will feel like they at least have the complete picture. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Hi, Meria here. As you know, I always talk about spirituality being your only ticket out of here. You may or may not be familiar with Usui Reiki, but I have been a Usui Reiki Master for almost 30 years. You may also not know that you can come in person and get your Reiki attunements with me anytime you'd like. I've had people fly here, even from another country, to get their Reiki attunements with me. Why? Because they trust me. Reiki is a wonderful thing, and it's the best way to develop your own intuition naturally. You don't need to do anything. The attunements start honing in on your intuition and developing it. It's great for self-healing. It's great for healing others, and it automatically starts to eliminate your karma. I do keep these sessions intimate. I've always taught it one-on-one, and that's the way I will continue to. So if you're interested in that, making a weekend out of it, that would be great. Just send me an email at meria@meria.net, and we'll figure out the best time and how to do it. So remember what I always say, we are all here building our next house. Might as well use every tool available to us. Thanks. Hi, this is Maria Heller. If you're enjoying this show, please consider listening to the rest of it, along with hundreds of other hours of education, by a small subscription on my site. Get over to meria.net, meria.net. You are the only thing that supports this show. There's no corporate control, and there's plenty of education on site. So please consider either a subscription or a donation to keep the work going. There are too many alternative voices out there that are being silenced because of lack of support. So if you don't want MSM to be the only mind-controlling news out there, please consider supporting the people that support you and help us all save something for the future for our children. Thank you so much.